Good evening. This is Richard Lowe, the Writing King, with the Author Talks podcast. I'm a ghostwriter, a LinkedIn branding expert, and a writing coach. So feel free to contact me if you need any of those things. And I'm here with Erin to talk about her books, her life, whatever comes up in the conversation. Hi, Erin. How are you doing?
I'm just great tonight, Rich. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to chat with you.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
Mm-hmm.
So tell me about yourself.
Well, I am 64 years old. I was born in 1959 in Manhattan in New York City, and that had obviously a big impact on my life. My parents were both in the entertainment industry to some degree. I don't have famous parents, but my mother was a runway model, a haute couture fashion model in Manhattan. My father was an actor. He did mostly commercials and, off Broadway, nothing major, but that was the scene that I grew up in. I grew up in a scene that was very alternative. I went to a public school in Manhattan. I lived on the Upper West Side, and I pretty much raised myself. Both of my parents were working. My brother and I were kind of left to take care of stuff. So that kind of helped me develop sort of what I would consider sort of a reptilian survival brain, like a kid in the city, right? It's almost like being raised by wolves, but, a different environment than the woods. But that I carried with me for a long time. In about, I want to say, 1971, there was a lot of dysfunction in my family. We'll also just add the fact that my father was alcoholic. My mother was a pretty selfish, narcissistic lady. And like I said, not unlike sort of untouchable, not unlike a Joan Crawford. My mother was just perfect, and the hair was perfect, and the eyelashes and the go-go boots or whatever. She just really didn't look like or act like your standard mom. Sometime I think around 1971, my father promised to quit drinking if we could move out of the city. Thought that was a big temptation for him. All of his acting buddies hanging at the bar after the show, and all the bars, he could just walk home. So if we could move out to New Jersey, he could quit drinking, and that's what my mom wanted, of course. So we did that. And that was a huge culture shock for me. I'm a little Manhattan kid, and suddenly I'm living in central New Jersey with 8 acres around me and a farm, and very confusing. And like I said, didn't have a lot of family as a guide or a rudder for me. So I got myself in every bit of trouble you can possibly imagine. We're lucky to be chatting tonight. I never thought I'd make it to 30 with the dangerous behavior, that I was involved in. Fast forward to, some terrible, family accidents. My father fell down a flight of stairs, a lot of trauma in my life, a lot of big traumas. And my mom left us and abandoned my brother and I as teenagers with my alcoholic dad. And I ended up sort of running away to California as a teenager by myself. So I went to LA, on a bus as a kid, and came off the bus to see the Hollywood sign and restarted my life. And I got really lucky. I felt freer away from all of the trauma that I'd experienced, and my life did really get better. So I really advocate for people to run away from their problems. You can do it, not permanently, but temporarily. It's absolutely possible to run away from a problem and give yourself enough time, right?
Yeah, sometimes a change in venue can really help.
It really did. I felt like people didn't know bad things about my past, and I felt like I could start fresh. And I was very excited and motivated to do that. And I had the great fortune to meet a radio DJ in California and started dating him. And I would go and hang out with him at the radio studio. And I got really interested in getting into radio. So I did. I did that next. Excuse me. I need a little sip of water. Oh, please. So I became a radio DJ in California, in Los Angeles, when I was 19 years old. And then I moved to Santa Barbara, California, where I got a full-time job. And that's, also as a radio DJ. And my next step was a very big job. I got offered a big job as music director of WMMR in Philadelphia. Mm-hmm. That means it chose all the songs that this big rock radio station in a major market played. And I got to make and break big bands all over the place. And at this point, I'm really only 23 years old. But I am, the fast track up the ladder of the music industry, and got really lucky. So I stayed there for 10 years. It was great fun. It was the 1980s. There were big budgets for all of the stars, the rock stars. And so the record companies that I would work with would take us all out, limos and concerts and parties. And, it was really a very fun time to be in the music industry because there were a lot of resources available. And then came file sharing. So suddenly now music is not a commodity that a record company can sell. It's a free product because it's an MP3 and people can just share them, and the money's all gone. So I had to kind of reinvent myself. And, I got out of radio. I worked for the Grammys for a while. I worked for the American Lung Association. I worked for some theaters. I started my own children's music school. Sounds like my life just goes great, right? Sounds like, wow, she had a traumatic childhood and look what she's done with it. Well, behind the scenes, I'm going to tell you that I'm still the same broken, damaged child looking for love that I didn't get from my mom. And so my relationships are not right. My jobs are great. My marriages are terrible. My first husband was an alcoholic. After I married him, I found out he had a criminal record. He owed the IRS. I mean, there's all after the marriage, I find all these things out that he had hidden. But the second husband is who I wrote my book about. The second husband I was with for 20 years, and he turned out to be a diagnosed covert narcissist. Like somebody, when I say diagnosed, I mean diagnosable. We did psych testing, and what came back at me was terrifying. It was terrifying to have a clearer understanding of the way that my husband thought, right? And what his intentions were, and how surreal all that experience was. At the very end of it, as soon as I found out this husband was hiding so many things for so long, 20 years, everybody thought we had a great marriage, everybody thought we had a great life together. He ended up doing what they call as a narcissistic discard, which means he went nuts. And I'm saying screaming, threatening. He had a girlfriend on the side that he must have met online somewhere. He's accusing me of cheating. I'm really terrified of him. He is completely unhinged. And this is a guy who had formerly been like a mouse, like Eeyore, just a real quiet, helpful, antisocial person turned into a raging monster. It's a long version of the story, but I did have a crazy life. We had built a house in Panama to retire to over a period of 8 years, a beautiful custom home. And he got away with stealing it, moving a different girl there. Everything that I had moved, all my possessions were moved on a shipping, in a shipping container there, and all the retirement cash. Bye, gone, and then divorced me. And I never saw him again. So this is a guy I lived with for 20 years. It was a stepfather to my son, and poof. So that was obviously, that just took me to the ground. It's unbelievable to have something like that, a rug pulled out from underneath your entire life, like your life is gone. You were moving to Panama with your husband of 20 years, your marriage is, fine, or you think it's decent enough. And then suddenly you have to kind of reinvent your life in your 60s. So I had a lot to process. I started journaling a lot, and I had so much journaling, so much that I wrote down, that I started asking friends, how do you write a book? I got a lot that's coming out of me right now from this emotion, and my whole life, this is all pent up, all of this stuff. And everybody said, write an outline, and then write like a little synopsis of what the book's about. And I just burst into tears because I didn't know what they meant. Like I do, but I didn't have an understanding of where the book was going and what it was for, right? Another friend of mine I got together with, who's a writer, said to me, just pretend you and I are sitting over the dinner table and having a conversation, right? Just write like you talk to me. And that made more sense to me. It was easier because I had a lot of stressful, ruminating thoughts. Well, next thing you know, I had a book. It took me 4 months to write this book. And I released it on Amazon, and it's done great. I have, sold maybe 700 and some by myself as a published author. I have over 160 great reviews, 5-star reviews. People are loving it. The book turned out to be a memoir and a story of my own personal experience of how I came to narcissism, accept these behaviors, when on the outside, I look like I have this killer career and strength and friends and all this. But it really is reads like a manual to understand narcissism. There are definitions and footnotes and descriptive words of what is triangulation, what is blame shifting, what is projection, who's most vulnerable to be targeted by a narcissist. So that's my long version of the short question you asked.
Well, thank you very much.
Okay.
Yes, we have somewhat of a similar background. I've had a lot of narcissists in my life, and of course didn't recognize them until way afterwards. Isn't that the way it always is?
I had no idea. It was 18 years that I was with this man. Not that I didn't feel, something was off, or he wasn't secretive, or he didn't have arrogance, but I would use those different terms. I'd be, God, he's so dismissive, or he's so arrogant, or why is he so secretive or depressive or filled with anxiety? Like, what did I do? And, you're walking on eggshells and making yourself small, and you're confused by all these terms. And it wasn't until, like I said, 18 years, and I got this psych report that was terrifying, where I started to do some more research, and learned when you have arrogance, dismissiveness, secretiveness, this, and all these adjectives together, you are dealing with narcissism.
Yeah, I know the feeling.
Yeah,
I know the feeling. Several bosses, my dad, my mom, all were narcissistic, and the dad is the worst one to be a narcissist, or the mom, because father figure being role model. So it was tough. I understand totally.
Yep. Well, that's how, my book, the reason why I took my book all the way back to when I was born is because having gone through this experience that just flattened me, in a way, I was lucky to have a pandemic, because I could just do nothing for 2 years. It took a long time to kind of recover from this. But in writing it, that's when I came to the realization that my mother's selfish, manipulative nature, I don't know if I'd call her a narcissist, but narcissistic tendencies, and not loving and mothering or warm or anything. Like, she was just a colder girl, didn't want to have kids, and had two. So that's when I realized it was really much more her influence over me than my father's. I used to think because my father was my opposite sex parent, and I didn't have a close relationship with him because he was alcoholic and depressive, that's why I pick emotionally unavailable men. But then one day my mom said, yeah, but why are yours vindictive? And I'm like, oh, I think I know now. Because my mother would be more so that way, more intentional and more deliberate about her behavior. My dad was just kind of a sad guy, sad sack. So I just kind of repeated that over and over again. And many people do that until they work out their childhood issues and whatnot. So I wanted to write a book that would help people to understand themselves and how they come to certain relationships, and how they can recognize, their own feelings and value themselves, and, prevent themselves from being susceptible to predatory people. And the first thing you have to do is accept the fact that they exist. That there are people out there that actually do not have your best interests in mind from the minute they meet you.
Yeah, it took me a while too.
Yeah, it's a hard thing to accept if you're an empathetic person, and when you meet another person, you're trying to connect with them and share with them and feel empathy for them and understand them. You think everybody is that way, and that's not true. Not everybody is that way. So
that's very true. That's very true. Yeah. Narcissists are very destructive, whether they're in politics, or whether they're your husband or wife, whether they're your parents, they are extremely destructive. And because they're covert, usually it becomes very, very difficult to even spot it.
Yeah,
they love you, they have your best interests at heart. They're always talking like that. Oh, this is just for your best interest, but and then under that there's the knife.
Absolutely.
The knife, they look like it's from somebody else. It's even worse.
It creates in your mind something they call cognitive dissonance, right? Where you're
very familiar with it.
And then, of course, that then sets up the susceptibility to be easily gaslit, and then bit by bit, your ability to trust your own decisions just becomes less and less and less. You have less and less confidence in yourself, because it's being reinforced to you regularly that perhaps you're just not good at this. Like, I'll take care of things. And you think, oh, that's nice. He's taking care of it. that makes me feel better. I always had to be in charge of everything. I was always independent and living alone and, taking care of all the bills and making the money and doing the grocery shopping. And I did everything. I shoveled my own walk. And here comes along this wonderful man who wants to build me a kitchen and bathrooms and shovel the walk and do all the things I need. And suddenly I feel taken care of, the thing I didn't feel as a child by my parents when I was left to take care of myself in New York City. So that's how a person becomes susceptible, is there's a hole in you somewhere that you're looking to fill, and you're looking to fill in an unhealthy way until you understand, really at the end of the day, just like they say in The Wizard of Oz, the answers are in you. You just have to say, it's always been, you've always had the power, my dear. So what you do is you have to learn how to love yourself and trust your gut. Slow down, learn how to feel your feelings and go, what am I feeling here? Like, how does Richard feel about this? Does Richard feel good about this? No, Richard does not like the way this feels. So the answer now is no, right?
Yep. Yeah, I tend to avoid, I'm much better at spotting narcissists now that I'm in my 60s. And it's interesting. I'm ruthless now. If somebody's narcissistic or other psychotic qualities, they're out of my life. I don't care whether they're family. I don't care whether they're friends. I don't care who they are, because they make me sick, literally, physically.
Yes, I have a whole chapter in my book that says the health side effects, health, medical and mental, of being with a narcissist. And I cannot begin to tell you how your body just breaks down. If you're in a long-term relationship like that, I was addicted to sleep medicine for 13 years, couldn't sleep through the night. So I'm taking Xanax and benzodiazepines that are breaking down my system. I did 2 inconclusive sleep studies. They're like, you're not having trouble breathing and you don't have restless leg syndrome, but you sit up bolt upright in your bed every 2 hours. Like, you wake up and you're wide awake. Well, what I came to learn is that was cortisol in my body from stress, from holding on to all of the anxiety that you hold on to when you're trying to keep it together with your survival brain while you're being attacked from all sides. And it's so confusing because that attack comes in a glove, but I love you, or this is in your best interest.
Yeah, or the invalidations that narcissists always do, where you just starts subtly and then it gets more and more and more not subtle.
Yes,
more control.
That's a good point to make, is that they escalate and it does get worse over time. So anybody out there that thinks they can manage the relationship with their narcissistic partner,
you can't manage them. They're not sane.
Right.
They're not sane. And that's one of the first things you have to realize is narcissists and psychotics and other groups like that, they're not sane, and they are trying to make you insane.
That's right.
They're trying to control you and manipulate you, and you need to get them out of your life.
Completely. There's no other way. What I've learned over the years of studying and talking to people about this is that they have a really deep self-loathing, and it's sort of turned inside out when you see that, assumed confidence, the false self, but they really have a deep self-loathing. When they meet another person they think looks like a prize to them, like, this is going to reflect well on me. You have things I want. You're attractive. You have money. You own a house. You have friends or a big family or something. I want that. That's going to make this deep self-loathing go away, right? So they snatch you up however they're going to get you, because you're going to fix this awful thing in them. Well, as soon as they get you, you're inevitably going to do something human, whatever that is. You're going to brush your teeth funny, or you're going to forget to pick up the dry cleaning, or you're going to ask them for something. Hey, do you mind closing the toilet lid, or, anything? And suddenly you go from being love bombed and idealization and you're going to fix it all to, oh my God, you're not going to fix it. You're flawed. You criticized me. Like, now I have to hurt you. We're going to turn it the other way, because now the only way I can feel good in this relationship is to overpower you, to hurt you. I'm going to project all this ugliness that is inside of me, and I'm going to put it on you. And I'm going to say, you're the one with the problem. You're the ugly, stupid, lazy, whatever. And
the more you try and fix it, the more they hit back. And the more you try and make it right and loving and stuff, the more they hit back. And they will hit back hard. I actually wrote a book, or started a book. She couldn't finish it because of the emotions, on a woman who was sold into sexual slavery when she was 14 by her parents for drugs and stuff, and stayed there for probably 10 years
Mm.
and finally escaped. And now is Christian, raised 5 kids, doing great. No narcissist near her. But she couldn't finish it. It was too emotional for her. But
I can understand, because that didn't happen to me. Like I said, it was very emotional, but it was cathartic to get the written word out. It felt like it was now out of me. But here's what almost destroyed me: recording my own audiobook, like living it again, saying it, and fighting with my ex-husband in my own voice. I had to hire a male actor friend of mine. I'm like, Mike, can you come in and do these parts? Because when I'm having an argument with myself, who is my husband, in 2 different voices, I can't even handle it. I would start crying. I'd say, turn off the recording, would drop to the ground. I'd say, I'll be back in a week. I sometimes had to take a whole 7 days off from coming in for another session. It took me 5 months to record it, longer than it did to write it, because it was far too real to feel it like that.
Interesting.
Do
you have a second book in you?
Well, I have a lot of ideas, but I'm actually writing a screenplay for this book, because I still think that this message of covert narcissism is not well represented in the media. I feel as though what you see represented in the media are physical abusers or overt narcissists. People, like maybe Don Draper or Tony Soprano would step on anybody or kill anybody, and they're confident and all that. But there are people out there that are walking amongst us that just look like Walter Mitty, kind of little quiet little dudes or whatever, girls too. But they have an agenda, and that agenda is not, pure. They're trying to take advantage and, hurt others.
The movie Gone Girls comes to mind.
That's correct. So here's some of them. There's one called Made on Netflix. And so that's a 10-episode series that has Angie McDowell and her daughter, who's named Margaret Qualley. And I think she's a terrific little actress. She's about 25 years old. So she's in an abusive relationship, but he's physically abusive, and he's also an alcoholic. And they're like in a trailer park. Mom lives in an RV. So you can almost look at somebody like that and say, I'm not surprised that this girl can't get out of this dangerous situation, right? But people would look at me and think I'm on top of the world. And the truth of the matter is, this can happen to anybody, right? So I want to depict that other side where people think your life is great, but behind the scenes it's bad. More like a show like Big Little Lies, where Big Little Lies has Nicole Kidman and her husband look perfect on the outside, but he's a real physical abuser. He's a hitter. Another one I put, like I have my comparables of what I'm, looking to be somewhat like, is called Dirty John. It was a two-season true story, true crime story, but about narcissistic and kind of Tinder swindlery. And then the other one is this Sleeping with the Enemy. So I think that's one of the first ones, and one of the most successful. And another recent one that I think fits into my story a little bit, because I had all those years of rock and roll backstagey stuff, is Daisy Jones and the Six. So that came out recently. I didn't love it. It's just my personal opinion. Sorry, Reese Witherspoon, if you're looking at my book. But there are the elements of that 70s, 80s rock and roll thing. And I think that's just another kind of a fun appeal. So yeah, like Gone Girl, like all those shows Made, I am writing a 6-episode limited series for it. And I want to make a movie. I've never done that. So I feel like, okay, you wrote a book, now move on, let's make a movie.
Well, there you go.
But I have a couple of ideas. I actually gave a book idea to a young girl yesterday. I hope she takes it. She turned 25 today, and I said, for your 25th birthday, I want you to start your second book. And the idea is called 365 Days of Dating Yourself. Right? So it's a new thing with young people are saying, like Miley Cyrus has a song out called Flowers, which is, I can give myself flowers. I can treat myself well. I can love myself. So there is this kind of trend with women who are having difficulties with their relationships to go, take yourself out to dinner, take yourself to a show or the movies thing. So I thought this girl who had been through a bad relationship could benefit from a daily exercise of that. And I also thought at the end of the year, you might have a book that somebody else might want to follow some of the suggestions for your healing.
Interesting.
A lot
or video series.
Yeah, a lot of people want me to write a rock and roll backstage kind of book, and people have been saying that for my whole life. And I feel as though I don't feel comfortable doing what I would call speaking out of turn about others. Meaning I witnessed some crazy stuff backstage, with groupies or, partying. And, everybody's older now. And it's sort of like not my business, I think, to talk about what people did when they were foolish and young and crazy, So it's not my business. So I've never done that. And I don't know. I think that's what people want to read. People want to read the bad stuff. They don't want to read,
Unfortunately, it opened you up to slander lawsuits also.
Yeah, exactly. I'm not doing that. When I wrote my memoir, my book is called A Dark Force. I was so careful, and I think I've really nailed it. I have a disclaimer that I think is very well written. I wrote it myself, but I used elements of other disclaimers that I found. I changed everybody's name. I changed the street we live on. I changed the name of the town. I changed the name of the dog. Dog has a different name, So I joke around and I say the people who didn't do me wrong, they got to keep their names. The people who did do me wrong all have fake names.
That's funny.
Yeah.
That's funny.
So there are some real names of real people that read the book and they see themselves in it. Yep. They didn't hurt me.
Well, we're coming up on 30 minutes. Do you have anything else you want to say to your audience here?
Well, let's see. You can find my book. Well, first of all, let me say one thing. I have a website, which is adarkforce.com. And there are hundreds of pictures of me with classic rock artists, like old rock stars, like Roger Daltrey or Robert Plant or Steven Tyler or John Bon Jovi or whatever. So they're fun. I'm going to hold up my book because I'm really proud of it. I designed my own cover.
Nice.
Yep.
I like it.
Thank you. It's a stock piece of art for this, but I thought it really depicted like a demon with a halo, like this is false. And it's hard to see, but there's a little gold earring on his ear because they also steal everything. They're like pirates, right? And then up here, the map is Panama. So that's where, he ran off to with everything. So that's in there as well, too. But I'm very proud of it. And I get emails every single week from people saying, you changed my life. Thank you. You saved my life. You're going to save other people's lives. Because when you're in it, when you're in it, it's hard to feel and understand what's happening. You're just like, what's going wrong here? But if you can take a step back and hear another person's personal story with some explanation, it's clearer. So that's also adarkforce.com. I sell autographed copies of my book there. And also, hold please, voodoo dolls, in case everybody needs one. Everybody needs one. And then my book is available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble. I do have mine in some libraries and local bookstores, and you can order it from any bookstore. I wouldn't say it's stocked at all bookstores, but I think I've done pretty well for a self-published person. It's a great way to go, self-publishing. It really is. I love it. But yeah, it's a nonstop, every day, all day. You really have to just push. So.
Well, thank you very much. It's been great having you on here. As I said, my name is Richard Lowe. I'm the Writing King, and I'm a ghostwriter. So if you need a book written, come see me. I'm also a writing coach. If you're having trouble writing your book, I can help. And a LinkedIn branding expert. If you think your LinkedIn is not getting what you need, come see me. And this has been Author Talk. I do actually 3 of these interviews a week. So it's quite a few. It's a lot of work. And I hope that you enjoyed it.
I did.
And talk to you next time.
Thank you, Richard.
Thanks.